Is there something going on in your life that you need to make a decision on? Do you have different type of thoughts that it's really affecting the level of clarity that you have? If that's the case, stay tuned and watch this video because I'm going to show you something that can potentially change your life, pending you apply the tactic what I'm talking about. There's nothing as powerful as a changed mind. If you're at a place in life where you really need to make some serious decisions, there's directions you've been going to that you want to change. So in this video, I want to talk about the power of a changed mind. Quick story. Got a buddy of mine I met a couple of years back. And so as we got cool and got tight, he actually shared his journey with me. Previously in his life, he sold drugs. He had challenges with alcohol. He was in and out of jail, in and out of courts. And then he says, something happened one day, man. I looked at my life. I saw everything that was going around in my life. And I realized that if I don't stop what I'm doing, I'm either going to end up dead or going to be in prison for the rest of my life. And he says, Brian, that was the day that I decided to change my life. So I'm talking back and forth to him and I'm like, yo, so how did you do it? What was it? What was that one thing in your mind that shifted? And he says, you know what? I got so sick and tired of being sick and tired that I hated the life that I had. And I had to make a decision that I was going to change my life. And so in that one instant, he made a shift in mind, which allowed his life to do a 180. And so he told me, he said, listen, I had to be very real with myself. In my environment, in my community, everybody that was around me was doing the same thing. So the first thing that I did is I had to change my environment. I asked him, I said, well, why is that important? He says, because I have habits, I have tendencies. And so if I hang around people that are doing something, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to probably be doing the same thing. There's a saying in the book that I read, it says, bad company corrupts good judgment. And so we're going further and further in the conversation. And then he tells me, I got into an AA program. And so he gets into this AA program. And when he first goes, it felt funny. He's talking to people that he's never talked to before. But the common theme is that everybody understood that they needed help. And he says, you know what I did, coach? He says, I dived into the program and I followed the 12 steps. I understood that there was things that I could control and some things that I could not control. And so long story short, my buddy's been clean for 9 years. Mindset. How many times has there been some things that you've been wanting to do, but because the lack of follow through, whether that be discipline or consistency, that's been the very thing that's been holding you back? What if I told you that if you can change your mind, you can change your life? Now, if you're new to this page, you've never heard me speak, my name is Coach Brian. This is Thrive with Brian King. We help you to thrive in life and make an impact through real stories, good information, family, finance, fitness, the whole nine. Because we understand that a lot of people are surviving in life, but they're not thriving in life. And we understand that if we don't get these 6 inches taken care of, right between this ear and the other ear, that can be the very thing that takes us out the game. And so what I've learned in my own life, at the age of 20, I was introduced to something called network marketing. Never heard of it. And so there was a guy on stage. His name was Norvell Brown. And I remember he had this boisterous voice. He commanded attention. And so when you heard him speak, you listened. And so he asked a question one day that resonated with me. This has been over 20 years ago, and I never forget this question. He says, does anybody in here know who their great-great-great-grandfather is? If you can, raise of hands. And so I remember looking to the right and looking to the left and looking to the people in front of me and behind me. And nobody had their hand raised. Not one person. And then he asked a follow-up question. He said, hey, would you like to know why? Of course, I'm like, dude must be smart. I mean, he asks a question, nobody has the answer, and then he has the answer. And so from the stage with the boisterous voice, he says, because he didn't leave you anything. You see, if his last name was Rockefeller, if it was Bush, if it was Zuckerberg, if it was Bezos, you would have a story of how your family came into this, how it came into wealth, how you got to where you were. And then he asked $1 million question: who wants to change the legacy of their family's life? And I remember almost like a church service, I just kind of put my hands up and I made a declaration that day that I was going to change my life. When I changed my mind that one day from the life that I was living as a kid, barely just getting by, I didn't finish school, I was working a retail job, nothing famous, nothing special. I decided that day that I was going to make a change. I decided that day that I was going to be the best version of Brian King possible. I decided that day that I was going to start to fill my mind with good information that can impact my life. It's one of the first books that I read, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. I loved the book because it opened a whole nother world to me. And what was blowing my mind was, at the time when I read it, the book was almost 80 years old. So is it possible that you can have old principles, but because you've never heard about them, now they sound like new ideas when you first hear them? Then I read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so then I was understanding the difference in money, on how to put yourself on the right side of money. And so over that time frame, 20 years of professional and personal development that has allowed me to be able to speak around the world and impact lives. But the common theme is I changed my mind. And so I talked about earlier in the video of my buddy that one day, one decision changed the course of his life. I talked about my life, how one decision changed the course of my life. And so I want to ask you a question. What decision do you need to make that's going to change the course of your life? What do you need to let go of? What environment do you need to change? Or more so, who do you need to become so that you could be the best version of you? You see, a lot of times we have questions and these questions need to be answered. We got to get around people that actually strengthen the way that we think, that help us to see it from a different perspective, because perspective is everything. I remember I was at a church service one time and they talked about how there were two twins. And so in the twins, they both came up in an alcoholic household. And so when the kids grew up, the twins, they had separate lives. There was one twin constantly got in trouble, in and out of jobs. I mean, life just pretty much was bad for him. And so they went to that twin and they said, "Why do you live like this?" He says, "Do you know how I grew up? Do you know how many times I saw my dad come and beat my mom, how bad he was with alcohol? And so I dealt with so much. That's why I'm the way that I am." And so then they interviewed the other twin and they said, "Twin, why do you live like this? Why are you so successful?" And his response was, "Didn't you hear about how I was raised? Didn't you hear about how drunk my dad was and how he beat my mom and the craziness of alcohol? I made a decision that day when I was a child that I would never pick up a drink. I made a decision that day that I would never live in that type of environment." You see, the only difference between those two was a change of perspective and a change in mind. One of the slogans in this business, on this page, in this channel, is that your mind is your business. And so in our mind, we have to set aside time to get clarity. In clarity, we get understanding. And in understanding, we start to hear our inner voice of what we need to do. However, if we don't take time to hear our voice, to recognize what's working, it's not working, we're going to find that we're going to be busy, but we're not going to be effective. And so I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen. When I went into 2021, I made a decision that this was going to be one of the best years of my life. I don't know when you're going to watch this video, and you can change the date and the time to be applicable for you. But what I do know is that a made-up mind can change your life. So take some time today to start to work on your mind. Take some time today to pick up some good books. Put yourself in an environment of people that can uplift you instead of the ones that drain you. Take time to be intentional about what you want to accomplish in life and watch what happens. Watch as you start to transform from the inside out. Watch how your speech changes. Watch how your perspective changes. Watch how you start to recognize with your eyes the possibilities of what's in front of you. But in order for that to happen, it's first got to change with your mind. Now, with that being said, I don't want to overtalk today. Do me a favor and please subscribe to this channel. We're trying to put out some good information that's going to make an impact in your life. We're growing, we're new, but we're excited. But we have a very lofty goal. This channel wants to impact 50 million lives, one video at a time. So do me a favor, if you felt that, again, you got value, subscribe to this channel. I promise that we're going to keep it real, authentic. And with that being said, have a good day and have a good week on purpose. It's been Coach. Take care.